Know the feeling. You're sitting across from someone you care about, phones face down, but the air between you feels thick with things left unsaid. A notification chimes, breaking the silence, and suddenly the safety of the screen feels easier than the risk of the real conversation. Or maybe you're in a crowded room, laughter ringing off the walls, yet a quiet hollow sits right in your chest. We've all been there. The rooms around us are full, but the connections feel thin. It's not that we don't want to reach out, it's that the bridge feels fragile, and we're both afraid of misstepping. Here at the Velvet Verdict, we look at this through a hybrid lens. I'm a human writer, but I'm weaving this with the help of AI, and honestly, that's fitting. We're navigating a world where technology is everywhere, yet intimacy is harder to find. We use that blend to hold the mirror steady. The AI helps us sift through the noise of opinion, while the human heart ensures we never lose sight of the ache behind the numbers. We're scanning the patterns of how men and women are both drifting, carrying different burdens but the same longing. We don't point fingers, we look for the path back. This isn't about who's doing it wrong. Men and women are both carrying the weight of this isolation, shaped by habits we didn't choose and wounds we haven't named. When we look at the social science, we see a shared story of hurt, not a scoreboard of blame. We're here to hold that space for you, to acknowledge the ache without accusation. So, how do we heal the quiet isolation we've inherited? We start by recognizing that the distance isn't permanent. It's a habit, and habits can be unlearned. There is hope in that realization, because it means the connection you crave is still possible, waiting for the right steps to bring it back to life. We'll walk through what the data shows about where we've drifted, and then, gently, we'll look for the direction back. Not a prescription, just a compass. A way to reconnect that honors the humanity in all of us. So, where do we begin when the distance feels so familiar it's almost comfortable? We have to ask, how did we get here, and how do we bridge the gap without asking either side to surrender their dignity? Structural shifts in work, play, and success have rewired intimacy, leaving men and women holding maps that no longer match the terrain. Unspoken habits create a feedback loop where hurt begets hurt, turning those who need each other most into strangers. These patterns accumulated in quiet moments where we chose protection over risk, building walls we didn't realize were rising. Healing isn't about pointing fingers at who broke the connection first. It's recognizing that isolation is a shared inheritance, a wound living in our culture as much as our hearts. For men, the pressure to perform masks, a hunger for vulnerability. For women, the burden of emotional labor hardens into exhaustion that pushes connection away. Neither is the villain, both are casualties of a script demanding strength that leaves us starved for softness. True direction requires examining our own defenses before judging the other's distance, asking what fear drives our reactions. How do we create spaces where a man's silence is heard as pain rather than indifference, and a woman's frustration meets support rather than attack? We're looking for a path where healing restores the trust that we are, at our core, on the same team. It asks us to admit we are both hurting, seeing pain as a signal rather than a weapon. It's about naming hurt without weaponizing it, and reaching out even when the response isn't guaranteed. This is the work of reconnection, not fixing the other person, but healing the space between us so love can breathe again. What the data shows, the scale of the quiet epidemic. When we look at the numbers, the first relief is realizing this isn't a personal failing, it's a shared current pulling on all of us. The isolation we feel in our own homes echoes across the globe. In Gallup's first global measure spanning 102 countries, 23% of people worldwide reported feeling loneliness, a lot of the day yesterday. This crosses every border, it's a human reality we're navigating together. Closer to home, the daily weight is heavy. In late 2024, 20% of U.S. adults told Gallup they felt loneliness, a lot of the day yesterday. That's 1 in 5 of us carrying that quiet burden on a single day. For many, this isn't just a passing mood. Pew Research finds that about 1 in 6 Americans, or 16%, say they feel lonely or isolated from those around them all or most of the time. These figures describe the wound, a persistent thinning of connection that affects men and women alike. The data also shows where the ache runs deepest, inviting us to extend extra care to those struggling most. The Harvard-based Making Caring Common report reveals that 36% of all Americans report serious loneliness. This rises sharply to 61% of young adults aged 18-25, navigating a fragmented world. It also reaches 51% of mothers with young children, reflecting the isolation of deep caregiving. These numbers don't judge. They map the terrain. They tell us the rooms may be full, but the signal is weak for millions. Recognizing the scale helps us stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "How do we rebuild the bridges we've all lost?" The data confirms a quiet epidemic, widespread and waiting for our collective compassion. Data shows the gendered shape of isolation. The numbers reveal a quiet divergence. Younger adults feel it most sharply, with 22% of U.S. adults under 50 saying they often feel lonely, compared with 9% of those 50 and older. Within that group, 25% of U.S. men aged 15 to 34 reported feeling lonely a lot the previous day, versus 18% of young women the same age. This isn't about who suffers more, it's about where the walls are thickest. When pressure mounts, our paths to support split. Only 38% of U.S. men say they are extremely or very likely to turn to a friend for emotional support, versus 54% of women. Meanwhile, 44% of women would be extremely or very likely to turn to other family members for emotional support, versus 26% of men. These patterns show withdrawal. Men often carry weight in silence, while women reach outward but still find deep connection scarce. Dating mirrors this. Among adults under 30, 63% of men describe themselves as single, compared with 34% of women and overall 42% of U.S. adults were unpartnered in 2023, yet the desire remains. In fact, 61% of single men say they are currently looking for a relationship or dates, compared with 38% of single women. The data doesn't judge, it shows where bridges washed out. We inherited different scripts for asking for help, but stand on the same dry ground. Recognizing this isn't about drawing lines, but understanding that healing looks different depending on which shore you're on. The direction forward isn't fixing each other, but learning to speak the quiet language of connection we've forgotten. When we stop judging the silence and honor how we've been taught to survive it, we make room for real reconnection. What the data shows, the architecture of our lives. The shift isn't just emotional, it's structural. The way we build our days and our homes has changed in ways that quietly shape how we relate. When we look at the numbers, we see a world where solitude has become a common feature of the landscape, reshaping the ground beneath our feet. In the U.S., the rise is stark. By 2020, 27.6% of occupied households were one-person households, a dramatic jump from just 7.7% in 1940. This isn't an isolated trend. Single-person living is rising worldwide, with Stockholm reaching 60% one-person households by 2012. These figures reveal a physical reality. More of us are navigating life in spaces designed for one. These structures quietly reinforce distance, not by malice but by design. The rooms we inhabit shape the habits we form, and when the rooms are full of solitude, the habit of reaching out can fade. Relational structures have shifted alongside the walls we live behind. Marriage timelines are stretching significantly. As of 2021, 25% of all U.S. 40-year-olds had never been married, up from 20% in 2010 and just 6% in 1980. None of this points to a failure of character. For men and women alike, these changes reflect a reordering of life's milestones and a new architecture of independence. This structural shift asks something new of us all. We are being asked to reach across wider gaps, to initiate connection in environments that no longer force us together by default. The distance we feel often stems not from a lack of desire, but from a floor plan that makes connection harder to stumble upon. When nearly a third of homes hold just one person and partnership arrives later, the bridges between us require more intention to build. Healing begins by recognizing that the isolation isn't always a wall we chose, but often a structure we inherited. We can honor this reality while learning to open the doors, creating warmth in a world that has given us more space to fill. The roots, how we got here. To understand where we stand, we have to look at the ground beneath our feet. Standing alone became the highest virtue. Economic shifts demanded self-reliance, cultural narratives celebrated the individual doing it all alone. They were survival strategies. Men and women built solitary silos for peace and progress. But here's the quiet trade-off we didn't see coming. As we optimized for independence, interdependence slowly eroded. The well-intentioned choice to focus on career, to secure stability, or to avoid the messiness of relying on others accumulated over years. We traded connection for control, thinking we were building strength. Instead, we were building distance. Rooms filled with achievements, but emotional infrastructure atrophied. This isn't about fault, it's about feedback loops. When everyone is pulling inward to stay safe, the bridges between us don't just disappear, they become harder to spot. We inherited a world where asking for help felt like a risk and vulnerability felt like a liability. Both men and women carry the weight of this adaptation. We guarded against disappointment, only to guard against joy too. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward healing. we can see that our isolation is partly a legacy of choices made to survive a different era. Now, the work is to rewrite the script. We can choose to value connection as much as we value autonomy. It's about realizing that true strength isn't just standing alone, it's knowing we don't have to. The path forward invites us to lower the drawbridges, not out of obligation, but out of a shared desire to feel the warmth we've all been missing. We arrive here not to point fingers, but to acknowledge the quiet weight each of us carries. Men have been taught that vulnerability is a liability, so they build walls out of survival instinct. That guardedness isn't a rejection of you, it's a shield forged by years of being told to carry it all alone. On the other side, women have often been handed the invisible labor of holding emotional space for everyone else. That exhaustion isn't a failure of care, it's the toll of carrying everyone else's weight. These aren't opposing forces. They're two sides of the same coin, spinning from the same isolation. When he pulls back, it's often because he doesn't know how to step forward without stumbling. When she steps back, it's often because she's running on empty from trying to keep the bridge lit. We simply hold mismatched maps. Healing starts with a simple shift in how we read each other's silence. Instead of mistaking his quiet for indifference, we can see it as a language he's still learning to translate. Instead of reading her withdrawal as rejection, we can recognize it as a boundary drawn to protect a well that's been overdrawn. We can meet in the middle by naming what's actually happening. We're both tired, we're both reaching, and we're both waiting for permission to be human. The direction forward is gentle. It's asking for what we need without armor. It's realizing that the distance between us wasn't built overnight, and it won't close overnight either. But every time we choose curiosity over assumption, we lay another stone on the path back to each other. Healing lives in quiet choices to lower the drawbridge. For many men, armor feels like survival. For many women, emotional labor feels like a burden. We honor both truths by meeting in the middle with simple, shared daily rhythms. These rhythms don't demand perfection, they invite daily effort. Start with micro moments of connection. Try a 5-minute check-in before screens, focusing on listening without fixing, or a shared walk, valuing side-by-side presence. These routines signal safety, not just checking boxes. They're about creating a shared rhythm where both people feel deeply seen. Consistent presence whispers you matter, even when words fail. Vulnerability looks different for everyone. For some, sharing a fear; for others, admitting overwhelm. The goal isn't to expose everything at once, but to test the waters. Small disclosures build a sturdy bridge for bigger truths later. Name your need, gently and clearly. I'm distant and want to reconnect, instead of expecting mind reading. This shifts focus to clear, kind communication that honors both perspectives. If isolation runs deep, seeking support shows strength. Counseling isn't failure, it's a tool for untangling old patterns. It's about building a bridge back to yourself and each other, one honest conversation at a time. We began by looking at those crowded rooms where the noise is loud, yet the silence between us feels heavier. That image shifts. A full room becomes a place of genuine meeting. It starts when we stop waiting and bridge the distance ourselves. Healing isn't a switch we flip or a finish line we cross. It's a daily practice, like tending a garden that's seen some hard winters. Some days the soil feels dry, other days a new shoot appears. The quiet isolation we've inherited loses its power when we name it together. Men and women can be anchors for one another, offering grace when old habits flare. We aren't broken, we're just out of practice in a world that forgot how to listen. Both men and women carry the weight of expectations that left us speaking different languages. But we are learning to translate. We are learning that vulnerability isn't weakness, and that strength doesn't require silence. When we show up, imperfectly but consistently, we rewrite the script. You don't need it all figured out. You just have to keep trying. Reach out. Listen deeply. Forgive the stumbles, including your own. The connection you're looking for is often waiting on the other side of a small, brave step. The path forward is paved with patience and the willingness to be seen, truly seen, by the people who matter most. Thank you for walking this path with us. This episode was crafted through a collaboration between human insight and AI analysis, dedicated to helping us all find our way back to each other.